Usually, when we think about animals in springtime, the first ones that come to mind are either birds returning from their wintering grounds or something like bears emerging from hibernation. But there's another animal that, at least around Easter, is also closely tied to this time of year: rabbits, specifically the Easter bunny. Now, to be fair, it was originally an Easter hare, but the origins of the Easter bunny go back to at least the 1500s. Originating among German Lutherans, the Easter hare originally played the role of a judge, determining if children were good or bad at the start of the Easter season. Basically, a ripoff of Santa's naughty or nice list. As part of that legend, the Easter hare carried colored eggs, candy, and sometimes small toys in its basket, delivering them to the homes of good children. So, yeah, still Santa's springtime alter ego. But I digress. Today's episode is not about the historical association of rabbits and hares with Easter and springtime. No, instead, I want to tell you about a specific species of rabbit, one of the four species of rabbit that are found here in Wyoming, and incidentally, the smallest rabbit in the world, the pygmy rabbit. I'm your host, Tim the Nature Nerd O'Hara, and this is the Dispatches from the Forest podcast. Now, like I mentioned, there are four species of rabbit that call Wyoming home, but the pygmy rabbit is somewhat unique. But before we get into how pygmy rabbits are different, let's talk about lagomorphs, the group that includes not just rabbits, but also hares and pikas, a little more generally so you can see how they're similar. While they look a bit like rodents, and they are somewhat related to rodents, there are some key differences between rodents and lagomorphs. Rodents are characterized by two large incisors in their upper jaw. Think mice, squirrels, beavers, those sorts of animals. Lagomorphs have four incisors in the upper jaw, two large incisors and two smaller incisors called peg teeth behind, not next to, those big incisors. While the incisors of rodents grow continuously, in lagomorphs, all their teeth are what's called open-rooted and grow continuously, which is why rodents and lagomorphs need to gnaw on things constantly, usually high-fiber foods, to keep their teeth worn down. Another major difference between lagomorphs and other mammals is that they don't have paw pads. Pikas have toe pads, but not paw pads. Rabbits and hares don't have either one. Instead, the bottoms of their feet are entirely covered in dense fur. On a side note, the only non-lagomorph that also has this trait is the red panda. Now, if rabbits are known for something other than having big ears, it's a high reproductive rate. It's a reputation they come by honestly. For the record, female rabbits are called does and males are called bucks. The average doe becomes sexually mature at just 3 to 8 months old and can conceive at any time of year for the duration of her life, a lifespan that averages anywhere from 2 to 9 years in the wild. Now, keep in mind that I'm talking about rabbits in general here. The pygmy rabbit differs a little bit in this regard, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. Gestation is about a month, and thanks to the fact that rabbits have two uteruses, she can get pregnant again as soon as the day after she gives birth. I'm pretty sure I just heard every mother listening give a collective groan. Baby rabbits are called kits, and a single litter can range from 4 to 12, which, if you do the math, means a single female can have probably around 60 new kits every year. Here in North America, most of our rabbits don't live in a burrow. They give birth in a shallow depression called a form. Kits are born naked and with their eyes and ears closed. Now, the doe knows that she gives off a scent that could attract predators, so she hides the kits in the form by covering them with grasses and fur, and then stays away to avoid putting them in danger, returning only a couple times a day to nurse. So now let's look a little more specifically at the pygmy rabbit. Pygmy rabbits are the smallest rabbit in North America, and in fact, as I mentioned before, the smallest in the world. weighing at most just about 1 pound, 500 grams. If the tiny size wasn't a dead giveaway, they can be further distinguished from cottontails and jackrabbits by their short, round, densely furred ears and small tail with a buff colored underside, as opposed to the bright white of a cottontail's. The range of the pygmy rabbit includes most of the Great Basin and some of the adjacent intermountain areas of western North America. Pygmy rabbits are found in southwestern Montana, southern Idaho, and southern Oregon, south to northern Utah, northern Nevada, and northeastern California. And then there's two isolated populations, one in east central Washington and another here in the sagebrush steppe habitat of southwestern Wyoming. And that's because pygmy rabbits need areas with deep soils and tall, dense sagebrush, which they use for shelter and for food. In fact, in the winter, up to 99% of their diet is sagebrush. And even in the summer, sagebrush still accounts for about 50%. Extensive, well-used runways interlace these sage thickets and provide travel and escape routes, and dense stands of big sagebrush along streams, roads, and fence rows provide dispersal corridors for these pygmy rabbits. Now, pygmy rabbits are rarely found in areas with sparse vegetative cover, and they seem to be reluctant to cross open space. And really, who can blame them? When you're a 1 pound rabbit, everybody views you as food, including weasels, coyotes, foxes, and bobcats, not to mention hawks, owls, eagles, and other birds of prey. In fact, some research has showed that about 89% of both adults and juveniles become a snack for a predator, primarily coyotes and birds of prey. And in fact, some birds of prey will stand under the sagebrush, surprising the rabbits, which are less quick to hide when they're surprised this way. Fear of getting eaten probably also plays into the fact that pygmy rabbits are the only rabbits in North America that dig burrows, one of the things that sets them apart from cottontails. Mainly used during the breeding season and in the winter, or by juveniles, burrows are usually located on slopes at the base of sagebrush plants facing north to east. Once below the surface, the tunnels widen to form chambers and extend to a maximum depth of about 3.3 feet or 1 meter. Usually, the burrows typically have 4 or even 5 entrances, more escape routes both in and out, but can have as few as 2 or as many as 10. In Oregon, pygmy rabbits tended to inhabit areas where the soil was significantly deeper and looser than soils at adjacent sites. Site selection probably related to how easy it was to excavate the burrow. In places where the soil is shallow, pygmy rabbits might live in holes among volcanic rocks, in stone walls, around abandoned buildings, and even abandoned badger or marmot burrows. Research has shown that pygmy rabbits very rarely venture farther than about 60 feet or 18 meters from their burrows, and at most they might go about 330 feet or 100 meters. When snow is covering most of the sagebrush, pygmy rabbits will tunnel through the snow to find food, and these snow tunnels are approximately the same height and width as the burrows. They can also be quite extensive, extending from one sagebrush to another. During the winter, travel is generally restricted to these snow tunnels. Unlike cottontails, pygmy rabbits actually have a breeding season, but it's very short, only about 3 months total in the late winter and early spring. The gestation period of pygmy rabbits is actually unknown, but it's assumed that it's about a month like other rabbits. A litter averages about 6 kits, and a maximum of 3 litters are produced every year. The growth rate of juveniles depends on the birth date. Young from early litters grow larger because they have a longer developmental period before their first winter. Pygmy rabbits reach sexual maturity at about 1 year old, significantly later than cottontails, which begin reproducing at anywhere from 3 to 8 months old. With a reproductive rate lower than other rabbits and a nearly 90% mortality rate, it's a wonder these little balls of fluff have survived at all. But overall, they seem to be doing okay. Now, that said, they are vulnerable to habitat destruction due to their reliance on big sagebrush, which can be destroyed in brush fires or is often cleared for agriculture or other developments. But in relatively undisturbed areas of the West, there are several healthy populations, and the IUCN assessed the pygmy rabbit as a species of least concern as recently as 2016. Now, that said, we should probably let the Columbia Basin pygmy rabbit, a subspecies of the pygmy rabbit, be a cautionary tale. The Columbia Basin pygmy rabbit was an isolated population of pygmy rabbits known to live where else? In the Columbia River drainage basin. The population declined because of its small size and inbreeding, with the last purebred Columbia Basin pygmy rabbit dying in 2008. Efforts to revive the population through interbreeding with the wider pygmy rabbit population were led by the Oregon Zoo, which produced the first 26 kits in 2009. As of 2020, over 1,300 kits had been produced, which allowed for the release of over 1,200 pygmy rabbits back into the wild in the Sagebrush Flat Wildlife Area between 2011 and 2014. And more were released into private land owned by the Nature Conservancy starting in 2015. If only we could teach them to watch out for hawks hiding under the sagebrush. Okay, my feral friends, that is where we are going to wrap this one up. I hope you're continuing to enjoy the podcast. If you want to help support it, here's how you can do that. Become a patron. Subscriptions start at just $5 a month, and with 3 paid months, you get free Dispatches from the Forest merch. Find all the details at patreon.com/dispatches from the forest. Donate through either PayPal or Venmo using my email address, dispatchesfromtheforest@gmail.com. Also, how you can contact me if you have a question or a comment or a request for a future episode. You can also donate using the Cash App and the hashtag ForestNerd. If you prefer to send a check, just let me know by sending me a message, and I'll let you know what my mailing address is. Dispatches HQ is actually moving soon, but not very far. And of course, there's Dispatches from the Forest merch for sale. Go check out the merch store at cafepress.com/shop/dispatches from the forest. Click on products and see all that we have to offer. Finally, you can follow Dispatches from the Forest on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Only one thing left to say. I'm your host, Tim the Nature Nerd O'Hara, reminding you to go outside and get dirty. Dispatches from the Forest recognizes that the lands where we live, work, and recreate are the traditional homelands of the Eastern Shoshone and Northern Arapaho people. We understand that this land holds immense significance for the original stewards, Native nations, and peoples of this region. The Dispatches from the Forest podcast is a production of Dispatches from the Forest, may not be used or rebroadcast whole or in part without express written permission.